Hey, do you play in bands? I did for the longest time. And I wish that I knew that DistroKid was a thing. I don't even think it existed back then. DistroKid makes music distribution fun and easy with unlimited uploads, and artists keep 100% of your royalties and earnings. 1 million plus artists rely on DistroKid to get their music on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, TikTok, Tidal, Instagram, and all the major streaming services. When you get DistroKid, you can see a DistroKid bank and withdraw your earnings. You get notified when you've earned royalties, and you can withdraw via the app. And you can even check your streaming stats on Spotify and Apple. Get 30% off your first year on DistroKid by going to distrokid.com/VIP/101pod. 30% off for your first year. That's not bad. We know it's a tough world out there. Why don't you make it easier for yourself? And to get 30% off that free year as an artist, where you get 100% of your royalties and earnings, go to distrokid.com/VIP/101pod. All right, stay with me. I'll be right back after this.
Entrando em contato com atendimento ao cliente. Para muitas pessoas é um jeito fácil de arruinar um bom dia. Mas na Zendesk, nós deixamos a experiência do cliente melhor. Melhor para sua avó, melhor para o seu vendedor preferido de flores, melhor para o cara do apartamento 3A, melhor para você, melhor para todos. Porque enquanto alguns dizem que o cliente sempre tem razão, nós dizemos que o cliente é sempre humano. E como seres humanos, queremos fazer algo melhor para todos nós. Zendesk, experiência do cliente com IA desenvolvida para humanos.
Interrompemos esse podcast para perguntar: quem você quer ser?
Designer, engenheira, pedagoga,
administrador.
Quer saber? O Senac EAD é nota máxima no MEC. Tem cursos de diversas áreas, com conteúdo elaborado por especialistas do mercado e professores mestres e doutores. Ainda tem o Senac Carreiras, conectando estudantes a vagas de emprego em todo o país. Saiba mais em ead.senac.br/graduação.
You're listening to 101 Part-Time Jobs. I'm Giles Bidder, and I speak to musicians and bands about how they do it. Between all the practices, going on tour, trying to pay rent. It's a lot to be a musician today. On today's episode, I speak with Bean Stella. I speak with Sam, who sings, and Skylar, who plays guitar. And they're a New York band, but thanks to So Young magazine and So Young Records, who you can hear on an episode we did a couple of months ago. Thanks to So Young, we heard a lot about Bean Stella here in the UK before anyone else. Their new album, their debut album, Scream from New York, New York, is a highlight of the year so far. That's out now on Dirty Hit Records. They've been on tour with 1975. They're about to go on tour with Fontaines DC. This is an exciting band, and one of those bands that you want to get down early to the big rock gig to go see. This album is dark, it's blue, it's black, it's muddied. There's a real swell beneath it. It's dense with these kind of low-lying tunes. I think you're going to like it if you enjoy this show and you're getting an idea of what I'm into. Bean Stella, Scream from New York, New York is out now. Cheers for listening to this episode. If you enjoy it, make sure you click subscribe. We put out 2 episodes every week with exciting and interesting bands. If you follow us on Spotify and Apple, that's a big leg up. So thank you. Cheers to our sponsors, 2000 Trees, the excellent independent music festival down in Cheltenham, happening 10th to 13th of July. That's coming up soon now. The Gaslight Anthem, The Chats, who are off Smoko, Don Broco are headlining, Manchester Orchestra, Hot Mulligan, Creeper, Gouge Away, Press Club, Turnover. At 2000 Trees, you can get your weekend ticket for 50 quid off using the voucher code 101pod. That's at 2000trees.co.uk. All right, coming up, we got Sam and Skylar from Bean Stella, just released their excellent debut album, here on 101 Part-Time Jobs. 101 Part-Time Jobs. It was New York the first place you lived outside the sort of parental family homes?
Yeah, we moved here for college or for university initially, and yeah, we've been here since. So I mean, it was kind of the first 4 years of living here. Definitely, we were like living in dorms and everything, and so on and so forth. So it wasn't the harsh reality yet, but boy did it come.
And what was that moment of coming? Are there any particular times where you were like, you got the train home, or you're walking home and it was a rainy, cloudy day, and you're like, "Fuck, this is it. This is going to be it for years."
Yeah, I mean, I had one of those yesterday. I think you have one of those like every day. Yeah, it's yeah. I'm trying to think of like any specific things. I mean, it was kind of like the tail end of us at university was the pandemic. So as soon as like things started opening up again, that was kind of like the, like, okay, like we're like actually adults now and we have to do this. And yeah, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of that. There's a lot of, I don't know, especially like I was working a job on the Lower East Side where it's like you're dealing with like the worst people imaginable.
Is that touristy? Is that like service kind of area?
It's like, yeah, it's like a lot of like models and like fashion people.
It gets oddly fratty too. Like there's a lot of like salmon colored shorts on the street for some reason.
Coquette.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, the record Scream from New York, New York. I had a great time last weekend. It's like just becoming spring here, and I just got a new bicycle. It's like a proper stand-up kind of like Dutch bicycle, and I feel like I'm on a fucking penny farthing or something. I was learning out how to ride this around my area, blasting the record, and it sounds like it's a really considered record. It's a really thoughtful record. And,
thank you.
In this conversation of making band work, making music work, like not losing yourself and all your money doing it, it makes me think about the kind of effort and the time that goes in to write and to let the songs breathe. How do we give ourselves enough time and thought to make a really thoughtful first record?
Yeah, that was a big obstacle. We like started writing it. We had put out our first EP and like did like our first couple little tours of the UK. And then we came back and it was kind of like, okay, like, we need to do it now. And it was like the first time we had like written songs all condensed into one period. Prior to that with the EP, it was kind of just like all the songs we had at that point. You know what I mean? It felt sort of effortless, but this, like at this point, like the effort was really required. And we were doing that. We were working full-time jobs. And then like at that time, like labels started getting interested in us. So like we were just doing like a bunch of like meetings and things as well. We set like a really high bar for us and ourselves. So like literally every moment we had, like every like 2-hour chunks were like we were all done working and we could practice in our basement. We would use more so than like we really have before. How
do you do in those interviews? I often think like the idea of playing music is something so personal. It's something you do with your closest people, and you're trying to find the most truest version of yourself, and then to go into a meeting where you're talking about your records to someone you've just met who it's not so true anymore that someone from a record label holds the keys to your success.
I mean, it's really funny because like they're so because like especially when all of us are like financially struggling so much and it's like dangling like a carrot in front of us, like, oh, we could give you this money or whatever, Yeah, it's a weird thing. I mean, it's like it kind of gives you it helps you develop your bullshit meter very early, because especially like when there's like one label interested in you, there's like a lot of labels that will kind of just dogpile on because they think it's like the thing to do, and like they're not necessarily fans of your music. So that was kind of like the first thing that I think developed, was weeding out like who actually cares about it and who's just kind of pretending like they care. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's a weird process. It was like the first time where we felt like we weren't having to sell ourselves. It was like usually we're used to like convincing people like, oh, do you like us? So this is the first time where they're convincing us to like them. Yeah. Which like it felt weird. It was like it was something we weren't used to. But I don't know. I mean, it's it was an exciting time. I'm glad that it's done, because it stopped being fun at a certain point. It just started becoming really, exhausting. So
Yeah. I mean, a lot of what goes into a band is exhausting. Do you feel like know where your own levels are and kind of respecting each other's levels?
This last tour specifically, I think we got like a lot more mature with each other, and I think like we've done enough tours now to where I think we know what like pisses everyone off and like when to like give space. And we did like I feel like overall like did a really good job of like exercising that skill. But yeah, I mean, it's always kind of changing. And also we like live together. The three of us, so Sky, Nando, and I, we all share this apartment, and Nico and Layla aren't here, but the practice space that we work in is downstairs. So the boundary between like personal and work, I guess, is kind of weird. But I don't know. It's like I think it just like works for us like at this point, and I think it's like as Sky said, like we were having a conversation yesterday about just like all of us are working so much to like be able to like kind of fend for ourselves here. And I think it, like when you're like having to prioritize that, there's less room for kind of like people getting pissed off at each other, because it's like we all are staying focused and like getting our getting money to pay rent and food and stuff. So I don't know. I feel like it's good that we're also preoccupied with that, because as much as it is like tough having to work so much, and like at this point of being in a band, like you're like we're touring a lot, which makes it really hard to hold down a job. And so like Sky right now, for example, is like he's just gone through like a week of interviews and trying to find a new job that he's gonna probably have to leave in May on this next tour. And it's like it's just like
we won't tell him.
Yeah. But it's like nonstop, like, and it's tough because like we're full time in the band at this point. We do all the graphic design stuff ourselves. Like we like do all like the social media stuff and like posters, and like all of it is so hands on, and it's such a full time job that we don't get any money for. And like at this point, and like we all trust that that's gonna come, and like we love doing it, and like this is our dream, but it's like at a certain point, like, this is reality, and like we need to be working like fucking, like, like 40-hour weeks, like to like make rent in New York. And the place we live is the cheapest apartment of any of our friends. Like we really lucked out. We're like in a rent stabilized place, and like but even still, it's really not that cheap. And it's an extremely stressful situation to be in, to be honest with you.
You hear a lot about, I mean, I've seen in a couple of interviews with, rappers and some guitar musicians where they were like, to get where they got to, and let's not forget that's like a never ending thing. There's always like the next thing that people want to do no matter where they are in their career or journey. But to get where they were, they said, and I'm thinking of like Central C, the rapper from the UK said this, he said, to do what I'm doing now, I had to be deluded. Like make sense of that future vision with what's happening right now in reality is like it's a real funny one, because you've got enough fuel behind you to know that you're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
But there's going to be years of work before you get paid for doing the posters, doing the tour managing, booking the shows yourself.
To some extent, like I've accepted that a very absurd nature of my life. And it's like, it's funny, like talking to my parents or whatever, who like at my age were like, having like good stable, you feel crazy, but you are crazy to a certain level, but it's like an inevitable thing. And it's like a thing that you feel in your gut and your bones. Like even like the thought of like not pursuing this, it just like really like does not feel good in any way. So, I think it's, everybody's life is different, and it seems absurd if you compare them to people who aren't doing this. But yeah, man, it's like when you're like dealing with like matters of the heart, like things like music and art and film and everything like that. This is how it goes. It's interesting that this is how it goes, but this is the way it is. Yeah.
There's some good role models out there as well. It makes me think of Future Islands and all the years that they had being in a band before that Letterman show, for example, or before. And so now we do have kind of, our generation has those kinds of role models who may be like 5-10 years older than us, where it's like people have done that, you know, growing up and reading old Enemies and Kerrang magazines, that all, you know, the trope or the story of the band of always getting fucked up all the time and like having a very successful career. That's just not how it works now.
Yeah, totally. I often think about that. Like, God, what was the band that I think like Sticky Fingers or something? There's like some like just like infamous rock band where they're just like always getting fucked up, and I just like think about those bands and I'm like, who was doing all this for them?
Who was settling merch at the end of the night?
Yeah, like because they definitely weren't. I don't know, but I think like one of the biggest preconceptions I've had to change in my mind is like the idea of like a record blowing up. Like I think like especially with like a debut album, there's like this idea that like there's like a list of maybe like 5 or 10 debuts from the last like 30 years where you're like, oh man, like yeah, they like fucking blew up. And I think that that's just like something that very rarely happens, and I don't think it's something that really happens anymore. And I think like you sometimes like we get into this mindset, and it's easy to do because you're trying so hard and you want the payoff. So it's easy to kind of be like, okay, like once this like record comes out or whatever, and like if things go to plan, especially like when you have a team around you, because this is our first time like working like with like a decent amount of people around us, and of course everyone around you wants it to do well, and so you've got a bunch of people being like, this is really great, like, you know, and stuff, and like we believe it's really good, and I think the album is as good as we could have made it. But the truth of the matter is like fuck, like 99% chance that like, yeah, it's gonna do well, but like this is not like a, you know, an overnight thing. And like I think it's like you look at like most bands and it's like, yeah, it's second, third, fourth album where like you start to get somewhere. So it's just like you just gotta like check yourself a lot, and I think that's like where a lot of people screw themselves up, is like those expectations. And so I've learned, like, I don't know, Sky and I have been doing this for like over 10 years now, and it's like the five of us, like Ben Stellar as it exists now has been around for like 6-7 years, but Sky and I have like, you know, sent like countless emails begging, as he mentioned, like, you know, begging people to try to convince them that we're like worth it. And so like when you do that for enough time, I feel like you learn to stop giving a fuck, I guess, and you kind of need to like reorient your expectations of like what success looks like and put it more into like artistic success, and try to focus on like making the best thing you can. And I think that's like success sort of follows. And like we've had some success relatively so far, and like if I look back like 5 years ago, I'd be like, wow, like, we've really made some headway. But I think the only reason we've made that headway is because we've really stopped like worrying so much about that, and you just focus on like keeping your head down and making the best music and show you can, you know?
101, 101, part-time jobs, 101, 101, 101, part-time jobs. I'm not sure if you read many of those interviews with members of the National. The National and Interpol were kind of similar scenes, but Interpol was always in the National's eyes far more successful than they were. They were kind of envious of it. They were like, you know, maybe Interpol will lose their suits one day and maybe we can fill in for them at a gig. That was the joke that they had.
It's so funny.
And you look at the National now and you're like, damn, if the National hadn't have been a band for this long, they wouldn't be the band that we love.
Yeah.
It sounds like the lamest bar fight ever.
Yeah.
No, definitely. I mean, that man, that era is so interesting. To be honest with you, we weren't like, we were big Interpol fans, but this record wasn't as on the forefront. I think like we were like into like a lot of other juggernaut New York bands. I'm always a big fan of like the Walkmen, and their career is one of the most fascinating things ever. And like the self-sabotage that they've done is very, very interesting.
I don't know. Tell me about it, because I know like Jonathan Fiery, and I've heard those records, but I don't really know much about the lore.
Yeah, I'm a big Jonathan Fiery fan too. Well, no, I mean they put out a couple records, and then they like had like a bunch of pretty wild stylistic changes, and then they put out this cover or like track by track cover of Harry Nilsson's Pussycats. And like it was like in like a very like sort of sensitive point in their career, and they like convinced their label to like let them do this, and then they put it out anyway. So like, and they would they would have to have like upright pianos at all their shows. So like they would have to like source upright pianos places, these like unbelievably fucking heavy things, and like have people carry them. So they're a very interesting band, and like their work ethic is like something I really admire. But I'm a big fan of bands like that who kind of screw themselves in a way. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of kind of forgotten bands like that. Jonathan Fire Eater is one of them.
We joke a lot about this. We met this guy like years ago. He like owned a venue that we played, and the way he was in New York in like the early 2000s, and the way he would talk about that time was always really funny, because he would have like these speech patterns and these like specific phrases. So he'd be like, oh yeah, like you'd see Albert walking down the street, like Julian would be there, and it's
the
like
first names.
Yeah, it's just like, but it's like, yeah, like it feels so like the lore is just oozing out of him. I don't know, so
it's hard for that to happen, because anything happening again is just a pastiche. Pastiches will never feel like that authentic or real.
Yeah, the interesting thing though, I'm a big fan, or like I'm very interested in like New York City like scenes and so on and so forth. I've read like a lot of books on it. And if you talk about, or if you read interviews with people from like the early 2000s time, they talk about how like it kind of made them sick to their stomach that everybody was trying to copy like the 70s in New York, and like everyone was dressing like that, and it's like, oh, this feels like really cringe, like everybody's, you know what I mean? So to some extent, I think it's like, I think every scene has there's this really great band from New York called Bodega.
Yeah.
And Bodega band has this one lyric that he talks about where it's like, it's a song called No Vanguard Revival. And he's talking about how like everything has been referencing everything. Like nothing is truly on the cutting edge. So like, yeah, like, okay, this band's like referencing the Velvet Underground, but like the Velvet Underground was referencing these guys, so on and so forth. And it's kind of like infinite regression. I think like, yeah, you give it like 20 years and then all of a sudden it seems very like, wholesome and pure, but everything, it's the nature of the place. New York is like it's where you go to like reconstruct yourself and build lore. That's like what Bob Dylan did, so yeah, I think everybody's bullshit to some level,
Yeah.
but also everybody's having fun. And the thing that I really do love about New York more than anywhere else is the music here is very, very authentic. It's very different in London. In London, I feel like bands are very reactionary to trends in a lot of ways. Like there's one band that does really well, and then like a lot of bands will like dogpile on like trying to sound like that. I think a lot of that's because your music industry is such a strong presence there. Like there's like, it's crazy. There's like booking agents at like random shows of like 15-year-olds and stuff like
hanging outside pirate studios.
That's it.
That doesn't exist here at all, really. I mean, there is industry here, but it's the only like time people have like A&Rs coming to your show is if it's like you're already like really, really like made a name for yourself, So it allows you to make very real shit without much noise in the background, which is, I think, it's a very good thing.
Yeah, this song just popped into my head, but it's a really good Lou Reed and John Cale song, and the whole thing's about like people growing up in small towns and like moving to New York and kind of like reinventing themselves. Good tune.
That's it. And I wonder if there's something, I'm from a small town, and being in like an hour from London, half an hour from London, you know things are going on and you want to be there. And I think that's what made me try extra hard to put on shows in my town or make flyers or start bands or be involved in that. It's because you see it, but it's not directly on your doorstep. It made you kind of want it more. You'd have to try extra hard to make it happen.
Totally.
Yeah. I mean, that was I think that's why New York is still very exciting and interesting place to write about for us, is the fact that we didn't like spend our childhoods here. It was kind of always this like golden beacon to us. And you know what I mean? And if you meet actual New Yorkers, they're like, I mean, there's a wide range, but a lot of them, it's like, it's not really on the forefront of their mind, obviously. Like they're kind of just this is just the place that they're from. But it's a very nice thing. I'm very glad that I didn't grow up here because I'm still excited about it all the time.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
So,
I get it.
yeah.
Hey, Sam, Skylar, thanks so much for being up, for giving us the time. It's been great to chat.
Yeah, man. Yeah. You. That was nice meeting you.
Yeah, nice to meet you. I just I like ending these with a kind of a work fuck up memory or a work gaff that stands out like a sore thumb in your past, like a day that you really fucked up at work or really messed it up.
Yeah,
you screwed the pooch.
Yeah, I've actually got a really good one.
Go, please.
So I worked at this gelato place on Houston Street one summer, and it was towards because like we were about to like go back to school or whatever, and I was about to stop working there. I was about so it was like the last day, and this like very perfect like summer August day in a very busy area, and anyways, just me and my coworker, and I never like smoke weed ever. Very, very, very rarely do I ever do it. But on this one day, she was like, "All right, it's your last day. Like I've got this edible. Like let's let's take it. Let's ride this thing out." And so I was like, "Okay, yeah, it seems fine. Like it's a little edible. Like I've earned this. It's the last day. Who cares?" So anyway, so we take the edible. And then I kid you not, this becomes the most busy the store has ever been. There's like a line wrapped around the block. It's like tourists. It's like absolutely beautiful. And I'm so unbelievably high that and it's one of those gelato or like ice cream places where there's like 30 different flavors of chocolate even. It's like dark chocolate. So I'm like hearing people's orders and just like totally fucking botching them. And I'm like getting ice cream, everything. And like, it's like I'm like psychedelically stoned. It's like, so like I'll put my head in like the ice cream cooler and like, I'm convinced that it's like daytime and then I'll come up and then it's evening. Anyways, it was insane. So I'm doing this. I'm like, everybody's fucking furious at me. I'm like losing money. Like there's like, I can't keep track of people's credit cards and shit. And then I go to scoop something and all of a sudden my like wrist goes numb. I gave myself like carpal tunnel that thing from fucking scooping aggressively. And I tell my coworker, I'm like, I need to like go to the hospital, but it's like only her working and she's also like fucking stoned as hell. So anyways, she ended up, I go to the hospital. I think she ended up like having to just close it early and then she got fired as well. So yeah, that was bad, man. That was rough.
That's a bad day.
Dude,
don't do drugs.
Yeah, God, the story is like so good because like it's already so bad, like just being high and then like practically breaking your wrist. Yeah. Oh man, it's so good. Yeah. Fucking A.
So there was Sam and Skylar from Bean Stellar. Their new record, their debut album, Scream from New York, New York, is out now on Dirty Hit. Highly go recommend listening to it. It's a highlight of the year, and I love how dark and swelly it is. Cheers for listening. Make sure you click subscribe to get 2 episodes every week. It's 101 Part-Time Jobs. Without our sponsors, we wouldn't be able to do this. So thank you to DistroKid. If you play in a band or if you're an artist and you're trying to get your music out there, put it out on Spotify, Apple, Instagram, YouTube, all the rest of it. You can make all your own royalties and pay a small yearly fee. Head to distrokid.com/VIP/101pod to get 30% off that first annual fee and join 1 million other artists around the world taking their future into their own hands and putting out their own records. If you've got a friend or a niece or a nephew or a cousin or someone you work with who plays in a band and wants to get their music out there, tell them to head to distrokid.com/VIP/101pod and they'll be making all their own royalties and get 30% off that first year.
101 Part-Time Jobs is hosted by Giles Bidder and produced by me, Olivia Swash. This has been a Mighty Moon Media production.